Assembly Speaker Robin Vos joins us now. Speaker, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on, Matt.
You fired Mike Gableman on Friday.
It's time for us to move on. I mean, if you look back at the investigation that was launched last year, first of all, it's important for us to remember that we had the nonpartisan Legislative Audit Bureau find problems with the election. The Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, a well-respected conservative law and legal firm, also found problems. So Justice Gableman's work last year really helped to showcase the bills that we passed and why they were necessary. We went to the spring, where of course he gave his second interim report, and then they began to talk about decertifying and overturning the election, which is constitutionally impossible. We paused the investigation, if you recall. We still had a bunch of lawsuits to deal with. And now we see that Justice Gableman engaged in very partisan activities that really were outside the bounds of what the Assembly Republican leadership team, who had met with him to talk about that, could accept. So we're moving forward. The problem still exists in 2020. Nothing about this doesn't say that we're not serious about solving the election fraud and things that we saw in 2020. But we also know that we cannot keep harping on it if we're going to move forward into 2022 and hopefully win the election.
How did this go down? Did you call him? Have you talked to him?
We sent him a letter. We did it through the process of the contract. I really don't think there's any need to have a discussion. He did a good job last year. It kind of got off the rails this year. And now we're going to end the investigation. We're going to focus on winning the election so that the bills that we passed, which are ready to go to fix the problems that were discovered, can be signed into law hopefully early next year with Governor Michaels.
You haven't spoken to him?
Not yet.
When's the last time you have talked with him?
Within the last month. Yeah.
Before he endorsed your opponent?
Obviously, yeah.
When did you find out about that, and were you surprised that not only he endorsed Adam Steen, but campaigned for him?
It was just disappointing because it was outright lies. I mean, there's no legislator in the country who authorized a taxpayer-funded investigation but the Assembly Republicans. We gave him carte blanche where he came to us and said, here's the budget, here's the opportunity for us. We said yes to what he needed. He then had the freedom to be able to operate as he chose. And then to somehow say that we were never serious about the investigation, that's just a bold-faced lie. To somehow say that we were not going to be able to partake in the good work that he did last year to make it into law, also not truthful. So when somebody loses the confidence of their client, which is the Assembly Republican Caucus and the legislature as a whole, there was really no choice but to move on.
What does this mean for all the litigation that's still out there?
It still is moving forward because remember, most of the money, people are frustrated with $1 million, where the vast majority of that is being spent on lawsuits filed by very liberal special interest groups trying to muddy the investigation. Look, we still know the Zuckerbucks were wrong. We still know that the indefinitely confined statutes have to be fixed. We still know that people were able to not use a photo ID and be able to vote, which is against the law as the way we see it. We still know there are problems with the ability for WEC to give out guidance that doesn't follow the statute. So all those problems still exist. There's nothing that changes with that aspect of what we've discovered. But the ability for us to move forward is focused entirely on now one thing, getting a governor who can sign the law because the bills are ready to go. The investigation has already been concluded. We know exactly what we need to do. Now, moving forward is, I think, how we show the people of Wisconsin that we have a plan to fix what's been occurring, but it's only allowed if we get a governor who'll sign the laws.
Will more taxpayer money be used in this litigation to still fight it, even though you've now fired him?
Right. I mean, well, remember, we're still defending ourselves. We are defending the legislature. These liberal special interest groups have been spending all kinds of money to showcase what they think was done wrong, which frankly, I don't believe anything was done wrong, other than the fact that now at the end, we saw that he lost our trust because when he met with our leadership team, we were very clear and said, don't engage in partisan politics, don't go to rallies and things like that because we want this to be an independent investigation. He chose to go against that, and that's where we have to end it.
Do you have any regrets on how you handled open records requests or how he did, which is some of where these lawsuits stem from?
Well, obviously, we had the open records request. We complied. I don't understand why the liberal special interest groups couldn't accept the fact that the records that were there were the records. They just kept suing and kept pushing and found liberal judges in Dane County to give them what they wanted. I still think when we go to appeal, we're going to win on some of those things because I think it was a way exaggeration of the situation. But we still have to defend the legislature, and that's not the choice that we made. It's the choice that's being made by liberal interest groups who want to continue to push the envelope.
If Michael Gableman calls you and says, why are you firing me? Why are you doing this? You say what to him?
I would say you lost the confidence of the caucus. You have lost the confidence of our leadership team, who was very clear in meeting with you saying, focus on the investigation, focus on winning the lawsuits, don't engage in partisan politics, don't bring attention to yourself. He couldn't help himself, and he did just that.
Democrats want an audit now of the special counsel's office. Would you support that?
There's really no need for it. Every single bill has been paid through the chief clerk's office. They can go and look at all of the records that are there. That's just a political talking point for them to try to make hay out of this situation. Look, we did good work. I think that we now know what was a problem with the election. We need to move forward, which is passing the bills. They oppose every single bill, even cleaning up dead people off the voter rolls, making sure that we have things that are very clear and transparent. So I think their focus should be on working with us to make sure we have fair elections and not focusing on something that they already know the answer to.
Donald Trump entered your race. He endorsed your opponent. He rallied with your opponent. You won by 260 votes. That's not many.
It's not many, but I'll tell you, when Donald Trump stands on a stage and says that I'm a closet Democrat, which for anybody who's watching, or I think for anybody in the state of Wisconsin to think that I am a closet Democrat, that's kind of preposterous. And then you had others who would lie about my record. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes people believe that. Now, I want to say, Matt, as I went door to door, people were incredibly gracious. We did 30,000 doors. We talked to tons of people on their front porch, on their backyard, and what they told me they wanted me to focus on was fighting inflation, make sure that we have great schools, make sure that we have an economy that works for everybody, that we don't have people living on the dole where they should really be looking for a job and supporting their own family. So that's where my focus always has been. Of course, people said they were worried about the election, and we're going to continue to focus on that to make sure we pass those bills. But almost every person I talked to wanted me to focus on the future and what we're going to do for them, their family, and our state, not to keep looking backwards. So I said for over a year, we could never overturn the election. That's really the only thing that my opponent and I disagreed on. And it was a referendum on that. Now, luckily, I narrowly won. But I think hopefully most of the state of Wisconsin can say that's in the rearview mirror. We have a plan, which is to elect a new Republican governor to sign the bills and focus on the future, not the past.
Given your race and what we saw in the governor's race, is this Donald Trump's Republican Party? Is the cheesehead revolution, so to speak, over in the state?
Well, I don't think we should define ourselves by any one person. Look, I'm proud to be a conservative. I've been a Republican my entire life. I know what conservatives believe. Smaller government, less regulation, more freedom, making sure that we have a world where people can succeed by hard work. That hasn't changed. Some of the tone and the rhetoric might have, but I prefer to be an optimistic, forward-looking elected official, and I hope that's where most of our party follows.
Did this primary run smoothly, and if so, why are new laws needed?
The primary seems to have run smoothly, but let's remember what we saw in 2020, where you had the Zuckerbucks, where they literally signed contracts and got kind of a quid pro quo for work with local elected officials. We saw that you clearly had people who were not allowed to be voting with indefinitely confined status, those nursing homes. I mean, there are real problems that are out there, but we know what the solutions are. We passed those bills. They were vetoed by Governor Evers, so he is the single roadblock to election reform. It's not other Republicans. It's the Democrats who don't want to accept the fact that problems exist with our elections. We got to fix them.
You endorsed Rebecca Kleefisch in the race for governor. Tim Michels won. When you look at how he won and the support Kleefisch has, will her supporters migrate to Michels? Is there a concern now as we head into the general?
I don't think so. I mean, like I say, I did more doors than probably anybody else in the state, and almost to a person, people had a preference between Michels and Kleefisch, but they always said, well, if it's the other person, I could easily support them because my goal is to defeat Tony Evers. So I think that's where the vast majority of Wisconsin Republicans are. Again, looking forward to the future. We're not going to continue to harp on the primary in the past. We want to focus on what our real goal is to have somebody in the east wing of the Capitol who's willing to work with the legislature and not be a roadblock to it.
Circling back to Gableman, logistically, what needs to happen? Is there offices that need to be cleared out? What procedurally needs to happen to, I guess, solidify the firing?
Yeah, that'll be up to the clerk's office. They'll work with him on all that. I mean, we'll make sure we have all the records that were determined. We have all the documents that are necessary. We'll go through that entire process. But look, I hope that at the end of the day, former Justice Gableman is a professional. You know, he understands that, look, we had to have a natural conclusion to where we are. My hope is that we show the people of Wisconsin we did good work. We have lots of documents, again, by 3 different entities, not just Justice Gableman's office, but also by Will and by the Audit Bureau, saying there were problems with the election. So for anybody who says there weren't, that's just a plain falsehood. There were problems with the election, and we have the solution. And that's what I want to focus on, is moving forward with a solution to get the job done, as opposed to continuing to look at the past, knowing that that's not going to necessarily have an impact on the future.
The caucus is meeting still on Tuesday. As you look ahead to the next session in January, will you be elected as Assembly Speaker again?
It's up to my colleagues. Of course, I feel good about where I am. I think that if you look at the legislature, of course, we have been rated the 2nd most conservative legislature in the country. I think we have done a good job finding ways to get our conservative agenda advanced. Remember, Governor Evers took a budget that had billions of dollars in tax increases that we threw out that he proposed, and he signed one that had billions of tax cuts that he's now taking credit voted for. Well, that's only because of the legislature. So I think we have a good team. I think that we have a good message, and I think that hopefully my colleagues will trust me again to lead the body.
Will you appoint Janelle Branchin to serve as chair of the Elections Commission again?
Way too early to tell. I think we want to have a conversation with our caucus because, we're a team, right? That's the whole idea, that you have to have the trust of your colleagues if you're given a committee chairmanship. You can't go rogue. So I think that's something that's really important for our caucus to discuss, and we will next week.
So there's a chance that you will still appoint her as chair?
Anything is possible. That's probably a remote possibility.
A remote possibility. As we look ahead to the November elections and we see what happened in Tuesday, what do you make of the state of the Republican Party in Wisconsin, broadly speaking?
Look, I have never seen the energy and the passion that we see among an awful lot of folks in the Republican Party base. Now, if you remember back to 2010, there was a Tea Party movement, and that was a hugely transformational effort. I think that happened again in 2016, where more people joined the movement. We had record turnout for the Republican primary vote. I think it was 40 years since we've had that many. We had a really contentious primary for governor, attorney general, lots of people who want to be involved in the Republican Party. So I'm optimistic. I think we're going to have a good November. I think we have a great contrast to tell with a governor who is feckless, not focused on the issues that really matter, let Kenosha burn. I mean, go through a long list of things where his faults are that I'm sure Tim Michels is going to bring up. But again, I want to focus on what we're going to do in January once we have a chance to actually get things done. I want to make sure we have great schools, that we have a workforce that's ready to go for all the open jobs that we have. We know we have to do tax reform. We have to figure out how we have a university system which values both sides of an argument, not only the side that is politically correct. I mean, we have so many issues to deal with. I want to focus on those things and hopefully have the chance to be able to make even a better Wisconsin than we have today.
And fair to say you haven't heard from or talked to former President Trump since last month?
I have not.
All right. Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, a lot of news, a busy election, and a busy few weeks ahead. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, man. Appreciate having me on.